Ethan had never thought that moving into a shared apartment would be so unusual. The ad had seemed ordinary enough. Room available for cultural exchange participant. Must enjoy learning about new beings and ideas. But he hadn't realized that new beings meant an actual alien roommate. When Zyra first arrived, she stepped out of the transport pod with a quiet elegance that made Ethan's heart skip a beat. She was taller than most humans, with pale, iridescent skin that shimmered faintly under the apartment lights. Her eyes were a deep violet, wide and curious, scanning every object, every corner of the room, as if trying to memorize it all in seconds. Her movements were fluid, almost like she was gliding rather than walking. "Hello, Ethan," she said, her voice melodic but precise. There was no warmth but no malice either. She tilted her head slightly, and the faint shimmer of light along her skin pulsed in what Ethan assumed was her version of a greeting. Hi," Ethan replied, fumbling with his words. He had imagined meeting an alien before, sure, but this was real and she was real, and now they were expected to live together. He shook his head and laughed nervously at his own thoughts. "Welcome to Earth, I guess." Zyra's lips curved into what might have been the closest approximation of a smile she could manage. "Earth is fascinating," she said. "I have read extensively, but being here is entirely different. I will study you, Ethan, if you permit." "Study me?" Ethan repeated, a little taken aback. "Like academically?" "Yes," she said simply. "Humans are biologically and emotionally complex. Your behavior, your reproduction, all require observation." Ethan blinked. "Reproduction?" The word sounded awkward coming out of his mouth. Zyra nodded, as if confirming something very important. "It is a crucial part of understanding your species," she said. "I must observe, I must understand." The first week passed slowly for Ethan. Zyra was meticulous in her studies. She cataloged everything about human behavior, how he ate breakfast, how he laughed, how he reacted when startled. She asked questions about feelings, family, and friendships, always taking notes in a small device she kept on her belt. Ethan answered as best as he could, though he often stumbled over words or tried to redirect her curiosity when it came to intimate topics. But one night, Ethan came home from work to find Zyra sitting on his bed, staring at a holographic projection. The projection displayed a rotating, glowing model of human anatomy, including reproductive systems. Ethan froze in the doorway, his mouth open, unsure of how to react. "Zyra," he said cautiously, "what are you doing?" "I am analyzing human reproductive mechanics," she said, glancing up without a hint of embarrassment. "I have read texts, but observation is required to understand fully. Your cooperation is essential." Ethan swallowed hard. "My cooperation? You mean you want me to be part of your experiment?" "Yes," Zyra said plainly. "With your permission, consent is necessary. I am aware of human boundaries." Ethan exhaled slowly. Part of him wanted to panic, but another part, strangely, was curious. Zyra's tone, her expression, it was clinical, academic, not sexual or threatening. He realized she genuinely wanted to understand human reproduction, not take advantage of him. "Okay," he said finally, "but only in a strictly scientific way. No funny business." Zyra's violet eyes seemed to shimmer in approval. "Understood. Strictly scientific." The following days were filled with experimentation, though Ethan quickly realized that Zyra's methods were anything but normal by human standards. She began with observations. She measured how his body responded to different stimuli, how his heartbeat changed when he laughed or exercised, and how his skin reacted to touch. All of it was documented meticulously. One afternoon, Ethan caught her staring at a mirror while touching her own forearm. "What are you doing now?" he asked. "I am comparing my physiology to yours," she said. "I am attempting to understand why your reproductive process requires physical intimacy, whereas mine does not. It is perplexing." Ethan chuckled nervously. "Yeah, humans are weird like that, Emotion plays a big part. It's not just about biology. There's trust and attraction. And feelings, Zyra tilted her head. Feelings, that is illogical, yet your texts describe them as critical for reproduction. Yes, Ethan said, it's complicated, and you're learning a lot, I guess. He laughed, but it was awkward. He had never imagined explaining the emotional side of reproduction to an alien roommate. Zyra studied him silently for several moments, her eyes flicking from his face to the holographic projection and back. I will need more examples, she said finally. Observation of consensual interactions between humans. Your friendship, your gestures, your affection, all must be recorded. Ethan groaned inwardly. You mean like normal dates, or like hugging friends? Yes, Zyra said simply. Hugging, kissing, expressions of intimacy, these are essential data points. I must understand. The first attempt at a simulated experiment was awkward. Zyra had constructed a holographic model of a human partner and asked Ethan to demonstrate physical interactions in a controlled, scientific way. He tried to explain nuances, the warmth of a hug, the hesitation before a kiss, the comfort in holding hands. Zyra mimicked him, her motions precise but strange, often overdoing the gestures in her attempts to replicate human behavior. Ethan couldn't stop laughing. You look like a puppet trying to learn ballet. Zyra paused, processing his words. Your expression indicates amusement. Does this reaction occur in natural mating scenarios? Yes, Ethan said between chuckles. Sometimes humans laugh, sometimes they blush, sometimes they just feel awkward. Zyra wrote notes rapidly. Interesting, emotional feedback is integral, noted. Despite the humor, Ethan noticed something surprising. Zyra wasn't just learning biology. She was beginning to understand the emotional weight behind human reproduction. She asked questions about trust, consent, love, and responsibility. She wanted to know why humans connected so deeply, why a bond could last a lifetime, and why emotions mattered as much as biology. One evening, after a particularly long session of simulations and explanations, Zyra sat quietly on the edge of his bed. Ethan sat across from her, exhausted but amused. Zyra, he said, can I ask you something? Of course, she replied. Do you ever get tired of studying humans? I mean, you watch us ask questions all day and sometimes it's a lot. Zyra tilted her head thoughtfully. Tired? No, fascinated. Yes, your species is remarkable, flawed, yes, but adaptive. Emotional, illogical, yet capable of extraordinary cooperation and resilience. I wish to understand it fully. You are a worthy subject, Ethan. Ethan laughed softly. Well, I'm glad I'm your worthy subject, I guess, but remember I'm still a human with human limits. I need sleep, food, and a little privacy now and then. I will accommodate, Zyra said, her tone serious. Observation does not preclude comfort or consent. Your boundaries are respected. Despite the awkwardness, Ethan realized that he was enjoying this. Living with Zyra was unlike anything he had experienced. She was brilliant, curious, and strangely endearing, even if her methods were unconventional. He found himself teaching her not just about biology, but about human behavior, humor, and emotions, things no textbook could explain. By the end of the first week, Zyra had recorded more data than Ethan could have imagined. She had learned about human anatomy, gestures of affection, and the emotional significance of intimacy. But most importantly, she had begun to understand the complexity of human connections. One night, Ethan returned home to find Zyra sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, her device glowing softly as she reviewed her notes. "You're still working?" he asked, smiling. "Yes," she said simply. "Analysis is ongoing. But I believe I am beginning to comprehend your species' unique approach to reproduction. It is not purely physical. There is a social, emotional, and psychological component. This was unexpected." Ethan nodded. "Yep, humans are messy like that. But I guess that's what makes us interesting." Zyra paused, looking at him with those wide violet eyes. Interesting indeed. You are more complex than I anticipated. Yet I am grateful for your cooperation. Your assistance has accelerated my understanding. Ethan laughed, feeling a warmth he hadn't expected from sharing his life with an alien roommate. Well, I guess that's what roommates are for, right? Helping each other learn, even if it's awkward sometimes. Zyra's shimmer pulsed faintly, a subtle sign Ethan had come to recognize as her version of approval or contentment. Agreed, she said. I look forward to continued observation and your guidance. As Ethan went to bed that night, he realized that this experience was already changing him. Living with Zyra wasn't just about her learning, it was about him learning too. Humans might be remarkable in the eyes of advanced aliens, but in turn, he was learning to appreciate the alien perspective, curiosity, logic, and the relentless pursuit of knowledge. And as he drifted off to sleep, he couldn't help but smile at the thought that his life, ordinary as he had thought it, had just become extraordinary. Zyra's presence had turned his world upside down in the most fascinating, hilarious, and human way possible. Ethan woke up to the sound of gentle humming. At first, he thought it was coming from outside, perhaps the city streets below his apartment, but then he realized it was coming from his own living room. Rubbing his eyes, he slipped out of bed and found Zyra kneeling in front of a holographic projector, her hands moving gracefully through the air as she manipulated floating symbols and models. "Good morning," Ethan said cautiously, trying not to startle her. "Good morning, Ethan," Zyra replied, her voice calm and precise. "I have initiated a new simulation. Today we will examine social bonding behaviors in humans." Ethan blinked. "Social bonding, isn't that kind of emotional stuff?" "Yes," she said simply. "Emotions play a significant role in human reproduction. Understanding them is necessary for accurate analysis. You agreed to assist, and assistance is required." Ethan groaned and rubbed his temples. He had assumed the first week of Zyra's research would be the most awkward, but clearly she was just getting started. "All right," he said finally. "Show me what you mean." Zyra waved her hand and a holographic scene appeared. It showed two human figures, a male and a female, standing in a park. They were laughing, gesturing toward each other, and occasionally brushing hands or sharing small touches. Ethan watched closely, realizing the model was accurate in terms of body language, but the expressions were exaggerated and stiff. "Observe," Zyra instructed. "Notice the microexpressions, gestures, and verbal cues that indicate bonding and attraction." "This is the precursor to reproductive behavior," Ethan nodded. "Okay, so it's like how humans connect before you know the physical part." "Yes," Zyra said, her eyes narrowing slightly as she studied him. "Connection, trust, affection, these are integral. Now demonstrate how a human responds to positive social interaction." Ethan hesitated for a moment, then shrugged. "All right, but this is going to feel weird." He stepped into the holographic projection and began to mimic the gestures of the male figure, smiling, laughing, gently touching the holographic female's arm, and leaning slightly closer while maintaining respectful distance. Zyra's eyes widened slightly, and her hands moved rapidly across her device. "Analysis in progress. You exhibit a complex combination of micro-movements and emotional signaling. Fascinating. You respond differently depending on proximity, tone, and expression." "Emotional engagement is significant," Ethan chuckled nervously. "Yeah, it's a lot more complicated than just biology," Zyra nodded. "I see. That complexity is what makes humans remarkable. I must continue observing." The next few days were a whirlwind of simulations, experiments, and lessons in human behavior. Zyra asked questions that made Ethan laugh, groan, or sometimes feel slightly embarrassed. She wanted to understand human humor, sarcasm, embarrassment, and emotional boundaries. She even asked him to demonstrate how humans flirted, a task that made Ethan nearly fall over with awkwardness. Flirtation, Zyra said one afternoon, appears to be a critical social mechanism for reproduction. Please demonstrate. Ethan sighed and rubbed his neck. Flirting is subtle. You can't just do it like you're reciting a formula. It's tone, timing, gestures, eye contact, and a little humor. Zyra tilted her head. Humor? Explain. Well, Ethan said, trying to think of a way to demonstrate. Humans often use jokes to gauge interest. If someone laughs, it shows they are receptive. If they don't, you back off. And there's body language, like leaning in, smiling, or touching lightly, but only if the other person is okay with it. Zyra's eyes glowed faintly as she recorded his explanation. Interesting. So emotional signals guide behavior more than purely instinctual drives. Yes, Ethan said. Exactly. Humans are emotional creatures. Sometimes feelings matter more than biology. One evening, Ethan returned from work to find Zyra surrounded by multiple holographic projections. She was muttering to herself in her melodic, precise voice while simultaneously observing and adjusting models. What's going on now? Ethan asked, leaning against the doorway. I am synthesizing data from multiple human interactions, Zyra explained. I am attempting to model how trust, attraction, and affection interact with reproductive readiness. This is complex but essential. I must understand fully. Ethan raised an eyebrow. You're really taking this seriously, huh? Yes, Zyra said simply. Your species' reproductive behavior is uniquely intertwined with emotion, social structure, and individual choice. All factors must be considered. I am making progress, but real-life observation is still required. Ethan sat down cautiously. Real-life observation. You mean with me? Yes, she replied. With your consent, I will observe human emotional responses in controlled interactions. This will enhance accuracy. Do you agree? Ethan groaned but nodded. I guess I agreed to this already. Just keep it scientific, okay? Zyra's eyes glimmered faintly. Scientific only. I will adhere to parameters. The first controlled interaction was a simple exercise. Ethan was asked to act out a friendly social scenario with Zyra. They laughed, shared stories, and practiced gestures that humans use to build trust and comfort. Zyra mirrored his actions with meticulous care, sometimes overdoing small movements in her attempt to replicate human subtlety. Ethan couldn't stop laughing at one point when she tried to mimic a human wink. It came out exaggerated, almost comical. You look like a cartoon, he said, clutching his stomach. Zyra paused and tilted her head. Your laughter, is it a positive response to mimicry? Yes, Ethan said through his laughter. You're doing it right, but maybe a little less dramatic. Zyra adjusted her movements and repeated the gesture, this time more accurately. Observation corrected. Learning continues. Over time, Ethan began to notice changes in Zyra. She was not just observing. She was learning about the emotional depth behind human actions. She asked why humans felt nervous before a first date, why friends comforted each other, and why small gestures like holding hands could carry so much meaning. Humans are illogical, she said one night as she scribbled notes. Yet these behaviors have purpose. Emotional bonding increases reproductive success, strengthens social structures, and fosters cooperation. Fascinating. Ethan smiled. Yep. Humans are messy but brilliant that way. You're starting to get it. One evening, Zyra asked a question that caught Ethan off guard. Ethan, do you trust me? He paused. Trust you? I think so. You've been respectful, you've asked for consent, and you've treated this seriously. Yeah, I trust you. Zyra's eyes glimmered with faint approval. Then I will trust your guidance. Emotional comprehension is enhanced through shared experience. Your cooperation accelerates learning. Their interactions gradually became less awkward and more natural. Zyra's curiosity, once purely scientific, now included a desire to understand human friendship, laughter, and even empathy. Ethan realized he was teaching her more than just biology. He was showing her how humans connected, how they cared for each other, and how relationships worked beyond simple reproduction. One day, while reviewing her data, Zyra paused and looked up at Ethan. "I have noticed patterns," she said thoughtfully. "Humans form attachments, practice patience, and respond to subtle cues. Reproduction is not merely an act of biology, it is a combination of trust, consent, and emotion. This is remarkable," Ethan nodded. "Yeah, it is. And that's why it's so important to understand. You can't just follow a procedure. You have to feel it, understand it, and respect it." Zyra's shimmer pulsed faintly, a sign Ethan had learned indicated deep contemplation. "I see. Respect and understanding are crucial. Data alone is insufficient. Observation must include ethical and emotional dimensions." Ethan laughed softly. "Looks like you're learning fast, faster than I expected." "Yes," Zyra said. "Your species is complex, challenging, yet inspiring. I am grateful for your assistance, Ethan. Without it, comprehension would be slower." By the end of the second week, Zyra's understanding of humans had grown considerably. She had learned about emotional cues, social bonding, and even subtle humor. She began to anticipate Ethan's reactions, understand embarrassment, and mimic gestures with increasing accuracy. Ethan found himself genuinely enjoying their sessions. He realized that living with Zyra wasn't just about helping her understand humans. It was also about learning from her. Her logical perspective, her ability to analyze without bias, and her relentless curiosity reminded him of humanity's own potential. One night, Ethan looked at Zyra as she adjusted her holographic models. "You know," he said, "you're not just learning about humans. You're kind of showing me how unique we are too. Like seeing ourselves through alien eyes makes me appreciate it even more." Zyra tilted her head, her violet eyes glowing faintly. "Then your teaching is reciprocal. You provide insight not only into actions but into the significance behind them. This is beneficial for both parties." Ethan smiled. "Exactly. And don't worry, we'll keep it scientific, safe, and respectful. That's the deal." Zyra's shimmer pulsed once more. "Agreed. Respect and consent are maintained. Learning continues." As Ethan went to bed that night, he realized something surprising. Living with an alien roommate had been strange, awkward, and sometimes hilarious, but it had also been enlightening. He had always thought humans were just average, ordinary creatures trying to get by in the universe. But through Zyra's eyes, he saw their resilience, their emotional depth, and their capacity for connection. Humans were extraordinary, even if they didn't always realize it. And Zyra, with all her curiosity and brilliance, was helping him see it for the first time. The city lights outside the apartment glowed softly as Ethan returned home from another long day at work. He felt a sense of anticipation, not because of any human activity, but because of Zyra. Over the past few weeks, living with her had become something extraordinary. He had expected an alien roommate to be strange, awkward, or intimidating. What he had found instead was curiosity, intelligence, and a relentless desire to understand humans, not as objects of study, but as living, feeling beings. Zyra was waiting in the living room, seated cross-legged with her holographic device hovering in front of her. The models and projections she used in previous experiments were gone. Instead, she had scattered holographic images of human interactions, smiling faces, people holding hands, sharing meals, and laughing together. She was observing them closely, her violet eyes reflecting the soft glow of the projections. "Good evening, Ethan," she said, her voice calm yet carrying a hint of warmth that had not been there before. "I have completed preliminary analysis of the data gathered from your guidance. I believe I now comprehend the human emotional dimension with greater clarity." Ethan smiled. "That's great to hear. You've come a long way." Zyra tilted her head, a motion that seemed almost contemplative. "Yes, I understand that reproduction in your species is not merely a physical act, but one deeply intertwined with trust, emotional bonding, and mutual consent. I now appreciate that these elements are critical for the process to be meaningful. Ethan nodded. Exactly. That's the part humans often forget to explain in textbooks. It's not just biology, it's feelings, relationships, and responsibility. Zyra observed him silently for a moment, then said, "Your explanation has allowed me to see the value of emotional intelligence in your species. It is remarkable. Humans are resilient, adaptable, and capable of extraordinary compassion. I now understand why your species has survived and thrived." Ethan felt a flush of pride. "Well, thanks, we do our best." Over the next few days, Zyra's curiosity shifted from merely observing to participating in controlled social experiments that allowed her to explore the emotional nuances of human interaction. She wanted to see firsthand how trust was built, how laughter could lighten tense moments, and how empathy could bridge gaps between people. One afternoon, she asked Ethan to simulate a conflict scenario. "Understanding human conflict resolution is critical," she explained. "It is part of bonding and trust. Reproduction may require resolution of disputes and emotional reconciliation." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "All right, I'll play the human who's upset about a misunderstanding. You try to resolve it." They enacted the scenario, with Ethan exaggerating frustration and disappointment, while Zyra attempted to navigate the conversation with care. At first, her responses were rigid and mechanical, but soon she began to intuitively understand the importance of tone, timing, and reassurance. "You see," Ethan said after the exercise, "humans don't just fix things with words. You have to show you care. Actions, attention, empathy, it's all part of trust." Zyra's violet eyes glimmered softly. "I am beginning to comprehend. Emotional engagement is inseparable from cooperation. Fascinating." Ethan smiled, realizing that Zyra was learning something more profound than just social behaviors. She was beginning to understand the very essence of humanity, the ability to connect, to empathize, and to create bonds that were stronger than mere instinct. One evening, as Ethan prepared a simple dinner, Zyra approached him with a curious expression. "Ethan, may I observe a communal meal? Shared eating appears to enhance social bonds in humans." "Sure," Ethan said, chuckling. "Dinner's ready. But don't expect it to be anything fancy." They ate together quietly at first, sharing casual conversation and occasional laughter. Zyra observed everything with meticulous attention: how he chewed, how he reacted to certain flavors, and even how he gestured while speaking. But then she paused and asked, "Why does this activity evoke comfort and companionship?" Ethan thought for a moment. "Humans connect through shared experiences. Eating together, laughing together, even just sitting quietly. It's about being present for each other. It creates trust and a sense of belonging." Zyra nodded slowly. "I see. Physical sustenance is complemented by emotional nourishment. Humans are intricate." Days turned into weeks, and Zyra's understanding of human behavior deepened. She began to mimic gestures more naturally, ask insightful questions, and even anticipate emotional responses. Her studies had shifted from mere observation to genuine understanding. She was learning not just how humans reproduced, but why they formed bonds in the first place. One night, as Ethan was preparing to leave for work, Zyra stopped him. "Ethan, may I ask something personal?" "Of course," he said, curious. "Do humans form attachments beyond reproductive necessity?" she asked, her voice unusually soft. "I observe long-term bonds, caregiving, and loyalty. These appear to extend beyond biological imperatives." "Why?" Ethan smiled, realizing she had come a long way in understanding. "Yes, humans form attachments for many reasons: companionship, love, shared experiences, support. Reproduction is just one part of it. Emotional bonds matter too. They make life meaningful." Zyra absorbed this silently, her violet eyes reflecting the faint glow of the city outside. "Fascinating. Emotional bonds are a complex system of mutual understanding, trust, and support. I see now why they are essential. Over time, Zyra's understanding extended beyond the theoretical. She began to apply her knowledge in ways that helped Ethan, too. She offered advice on communication, suggested ways to approach stressful situations, and even helped him navigate minor conflicts with friends. Ethan realized that living with an alien roommate had transformed his perspective on human behavior as much as it had transformed Zyra's understanding. One afternoon, Ethan caught Zyra staring out the window at the city skyline. "Thinking about something?" he asked. "I am considering the emotional and social dynamics of humans," she said simply. "Your species is extraordinary. There is a resilience, a compassion, and a creativity that is not merely biological. It is inspiring." Ethan smiled. "I think you've learned more than I ever expected you to. You're starting to see humans as well as amazing." Zyra nodded. "Yes, and you, Ethan, have been instrumental. Your guidance, patience, and willingness to explain emotional complexities have accelerated comprehension. I value your cooperation." Ethan felt a warm pride in his chest. "Thanks, Zyra. I'm glad I could help, and I guess I've learned from you too." One evening, as they sat together reviewing her notes, Zyra paused and said something that made Ethan stop mid-sentence. "Ethan, I now understand why humans are regarded as remarkable by other species. Your adaptability, emotional depth, and capacity for connection are unparalleled. It is an honor to study and learn from you." Ethan laughed softly, feeling a mix of pride and amusement. "Well, that's kind of flattering, even if it's coming from an alien roommate." Zyra's eyes glimmered faintly. "It is not flattery. It is observation and understanding. Humans are extraordinary. Your species, resilience, and emotional intelligence are impressive." As weeks passed, their friendship grew stronger. Zyra continued her studies, but now with a profound respect for humans and a deep appreciation for the emotional and ethical dimensions of human life. Ethan realized that the alien perspective had taught him to see his own species in a new light. Humans were remarkable not because of their technology or strength, but because of their compassion, creativity, and ability to connect. One night, Ethan found Zyra sitting quietly, her device off, gazing at the stars through the window. "You're quiet tonight," he said, joining her. "I am contemplating," she said softly. "I have learned much about human behavior, emotion, and reproduction. But I realize that knowledge alone is insufficient. Understanding must be paired with respect and ethical consideration. Humans exemplify this in ways I did not anticipate." Ethan nodded. "Yeah, humans aren't perfect, but we try. And sometimes seeing our flaws makes us appreciate our strengths even more." Zyra's violet eyes shone faintly in the starlight. "I understand. Observation has become comprehension. Study has become respect. Your species is remarkable. I am grateful for this opportunity." Ethan smiled. "I'm glad, Zyra, and I'm glad you're my roommate. You've taught me a lot too about curiosity, learning, and seeing the world differently." Zyra tilted her head, a faint shimmer pulsing across her skin. "Then our exchange is mutual. We have both learned. Humans are extraordinary and your species' potential is inspiring. I will carry this understanding back to my people, Ethan. You have demonstrated the remarkable qualities of your species." Ethan felt a deep sense of pride. He had always thought of humans as ordinary, but through Zyra's eyes, he saw something new. Humans were resilient, compassionate, and capable of profound connection. Their biology was fascinating, but it was their emotions, ethics, and relationships that made them truly extraordinary. And as Ethan looked at Zyra, he realized that living with an alien roommate had changed him as much as it had changed her. Together, they had explored the complexities of humanity, shared laughter and learning, and formed a friendship that bridged the gap between species. As the night grew darker, Ethan and Zyra sat quietly, watching the city lights and the stars beyond. There were no experiments, no simulations, no notes to take, just understanding, respect, and a shared appreciation for the extraordinary nature of humans. And in that quiet moment, Ethan realized that humans were remarkable not just in the eyes of aliens, but in the very essence of who they were: curious, resilient, compassionate, and endlessly capable of growth. Zyra's study had started as an experiment, but it had become something much more profound, a testament to humanity's enduring potential and the value of curiosity, understanding, and connection. The weeks of awkward simulations, humorous attempts at mimicry, and patient teaching had led to this moment. Humans were extraordinary, Zyra had learned, and Ethan knew it too. He had lived it. As the city hummed softly below and the stars glimmered above, Ethan realized that life could be extraordinary in the most unexpected ways. An alien roommate had arrived to study human reproduction, but in the process, both of them had discovered something far more important: the remarkable power of connection, understanding, and the human spirit.